Hey, we're live. Look at that. Look at that. We're doing stuff. If you're watching this on the replay, you can fast forward about 10 minutes and we'll be starting the show. Let me put into the chat room. All right. And put some links in the chat room here. And that's there. And let's change the website banner so it points to the video. Lights are on. Already did the camera checks. I'm a little ahead of the game. But I haven't done this in 2 weeks. It's like I've never done it before. It's like I'm starting over fresh. You go 2 weeks and that's it. You're worthless. What was I doing? I was doing something here. Oh yes, changing the bar on the website. Let's change that bar. A plus study group is right now. Right now. Click here to join us. Join us. There we go. And it's /live. And we reset the cookie and save the changes. She's got a cannoli in her pocket. Okay, that works. Whoops. What's behind here? What else is on this page that you probably shouldn't be seeing? I think I moved everything off the page. The bad page. All the things I've been doing this morning. Website maintenance. Constant process. Not really website maintenance as much as security updates. All right, the bar is updated. I don't need this dashboard anymore. What else can we do? Da 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 da, ba 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 ba. Well, let's see. We've got 8 minutes, 7 minutes before we get started. Get your, I guess I should get my stuff ready to go. That does not need a build. Whoops. What I do need to do is send my send more CEU answers for that stuff. Would be good. Would be very good to send those. Haven't done those in a couple of weeks. I'm a little behind. I have a little bit to do. You know what we haven't done is check audio. Let's check audio on /live, which is difficult to do because I have to get it before all things pop up on the screen. And when I'm able to do it, there. Okay, let's turn this down so it's not very loud for you. See, I don't care how it looks. I want to know how it sounds on the screen. And when I'm able to do it, there. Okay, let's turn this down so it's not very loud for you. See, I don't care how it looks. I want to know how it sounds. Okay, well, it sounds... Okay. It sounds a little like it needs a little something. Where's my mixer? You can't see my mixer. My mixer for the stream is it's outputting stuff. It sounds like it's being sounds like it's not. It's a little bit weird. That's okay. It's all good. Howdy, Steve. The moving red lights. Oh my this is my Cylons. These are some video recorders. During the study group, I record 2 streams, which you don't see. You can sort of see them there in front of me. So you've got a stream that is the stream that's going out live. That's the one on my right. And there's a preview stream on the left. And I will set up the camera that I want to show you next in the preview stream. And then I hit a button. And of course, I just showed you. There we go. I hit a button and it flips to the other stream. So, well, what I do is I record both of those simultaneously, which interestingly enough is how I record the normal training courses. So I record what's on my front screen in front of me, and I record what's on the camera that's pointing at me, and they're both recorded simultaneously onto SSD. And then I can simply move those over to an SSD reader connected via connected via Thunderbolt. And I'm able to use those as live drives. So I don't have to copy them anywhere. I can edit them on the SSD. It makes it very fast. I don't have to do any additional rendering, pre-rendering prior to editing. I can simply plug them and stick them in there. The reason I do this is in case something happens with the stream, something happens with the video that's on YouTube, something I don't want to have in the permanent video. I want to edit out something. I can always do that too if I wanted. But they're down here. I try not to edit anything. Once we're done with the study group, it's live, it's online, we're done. Makes it easy. But it's always good to have a backup. I'm also recording, this panel in front of me is for my TriCaster. It's the thing that's actually doing the video switching. And it is also recording, because it's a separate Windows machine that's running down here on my left side that you can't see. There's a bunch of equipment. You can kind of see the lights flashing down there. There's a bunch of equipment there that handles video and audio. So video and audio is on my left, although sort of my utility devices are on my right. Just turned out that way. And that's why you see lights flashing. Sort of a long answer, wasn't it? Thanks for joining us in the chat room. If you're watching this on YouTube, I don't have a chat room there. You have to go to professormesser.com/live to see the chat room there. We're going to start in about 2.5 minutes. 2.5 minutes. Final check. You guys ready in the back? There's nobody in the back. There's nobody here. You're seeing everyone in the studio. Not much going on there. Let's start this up. Does that work? It does. What else? What else can we do? That's about it. Where is the video being shown? So true. Where is? It's right there. It's right there. See, now you're seeing a little bit of a delay. You saw me type that in. If you're watching the chat room, it's like 15, 20 seconds later. What is the room name for Socrative? Let's put this over here. Socrative.com. Professor Messer. Have I started that? I haven't. See, that's something I could do. That'll kill some good time. Start a quiz. It'll be for the study group. Teacher paste. Disable student names. Start. See, now you should see something. 19 of you are already in there. You don't have to join Creative, but it helps if you want to answer a question. Da 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 da. Ba 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 ba. All right. What else we got going on here? I think that's it. Gosh, we're almost ready. We got to do this thing now. It's kind of jumped on me today. Like, you got to do this thing. Oh, yeah, you're right. There's a thing. We're streaming, we're recording, we're recording, we're recording. So really it's on me at this point. It's kind of where we are. All right, everybody. Places. Speed. There's no film. There's no film in here. Da, 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 da. Yes. Let's do this. I think we're time. It's time to get things started, isn't it? Let's begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May 2016 Professor Messer A+ Study Group. It's our Study group of the month. We do one of these every month. I was actually thinking of going back and seeing how many of these we've done so far. We've done a number of years of these. You can always go to professormesser.com. I've got a whole archive of all of the study groups. You can watch all of them if you wanted to for some reason. I'm not even sure why you're here right now, but nonetheless, here you are, and I have plenty of questions for you to answer today. This is a study group where I will ask you questions during this first hour, and online you will use Socrative, which is a great little service that I use, to be able to answer them along with everyone else. And I don't know what your answer will be. It just sort of summarizes them all, so don't feel weird about having to answer or worry that you're going to get it right or wrong. I have no idea who's answering what. I just see a cumulative roll-up of everything that's there. There is a lot going on here, though, and in the second hour, I'll open up the phone lines, by the way. That's usually the official study group is over, usually in the first hour or so. I would not be able to do this without you, and thank you for watching my free video series. Well, thank you for your support of my course notes. I'll talk about those later, and there's so many other things coming on the A+ side for you guys. I wish I could tell you what I've been working on behind the scenes, but I am not quite able to tell you that. Hopefully this weekend I'll have something to announce. Also, don't forget about the live daily pop quiz question for A+. You can always catch that on my website. You can find it on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. You can do that on Facebook. Find it on my Facebook page, of course. And don't forget about my discount on vouchers. So you can go to professormesser.com. Thanks to GTS Learning, there's a voucher discount there for 10%. So that always helps as well. So you don't have to pay the full price for your vouchers. And that certainly helps when you have to buy 2 of them for the 901 and the 902 course. Also remember that you get a continuing education unit if you already have your A+, or you already have your Network Plus, and I guess to some degree your Security Plus. If you wanted to get an hour of CEUs, you can do that. There's a website, that's a big long URL on the CompTIA website, but there it is nonetheless. That tells you all about the CEUs that you can earn. Of course, you can't get a CEU from CompTIA unless you already have the certification, but you're more than welcome to do that. Sometime within this study group, I'll tell you exactly how to earn that CEU. For those of you that have been waiting, watching this live, I'm a couple of weeks behind with my CEUs, so I apologize. I'll get those out today. It's a good use of my afternoon to be able to do that. Well, I spoke specifically about the 901 exam, but as many of you are aware, we're in this transition period where the older 800 series exams, the 220-801 and the 220-802, are in the process of being phased out. But you can still take the 801 and the 802 exam up until June the 30th. And June the 30th, those exams are retired. Now, you can take the 801 and 802 up until that day. You can sit for both of those exams and hopefully pass them on June the 30th, and you'll still be A+ certified for 3 years. So the certification doesn't change as long as you earn it and take those 800 series exams and pass them by June the 30th. This is May the 4th. So if you're watching this live or on a replay that's pretty quick here, now one of the things you need to know is that you have to pass both of them. If you take the 801 and you don't pass the 802 before June 30th, you have to start all over again. So it's May the 4th. You might as well start with the 900 series exams. So it's very easy to transition over if you've already started on the 800 series because it's only an incremental upgrade. But you may want to consider that. There are a number of people, though, on my website that say, I'm going after this and I'm going to finish it before June the 30th. If you can do it, go for it. You should be able to get all the way through and get finished with all of those pieces. At this point, if you're just starting out, I would highly recommend you consider taking the 900 series exams, which aren't due to retire for at least 3 years. So you got a little bit of time there to balance out. You've got plenty of time. December 15th was when it was released. So it's 15, 16, 17, December 15th of 2018. Somewhere in there is when you can expect those to retire. And then we'll have whatever the new version of the exam is. I, of course, have all of my videos available for you to watch absolutely free. You can go to YouTube, you can go to professormesser.com. Everything is there. If you do have a need to take these videos offline, there are offline versions of this available. You can find out all about that on professormesser.com. There's links everywhere to learn how you can take the 900 videos with you. Now, you want to be able to answer questions today. So let's get into this. The way that you do this is you can open up a new window in your browser, or you can go to your mobile device and download an app called Socrative. Socrative is an application that allows you to answer these questions live as I'm asking them. You want the Socrative Student app. There are a number of apps out there. There's a teacher app. That's the one I use. There's a student app. That's the one you're going to use. When you go into the Socrative website, you want to log in or connect as a student. And the room that you want to go to, and make sure you spell this right, is Professor Messer. So go to ProfessorMesser. It sort of rhymes, but there's an O and there's an E, and you have to make sure you spell it right. Otherwise, you'll be the only one in the room, and you won't see the question that is on the screen right now, which says, how long have you been studying for your A+ certification? If you can see that question, then you should absolutely be in the correct room. So let me show you this information one more time just so you can make sure you see it. This is Socrative.com. Go to the student login and go to ProfessorMesser.com. It is anonymous. You're not logging in. If it asks you for a name, you put any name you want. There's no registration required or anything you have to do. All we're doing here is going in, answering questions. Okay, maybe they're storing your IP address in a log so they can do maintenance. But I'm not asking you for any information on Socrative. You don't have to log in. There is no information. There's nothing specific you would need to know about those things. So don't worry about data collection on the Socrative side. That's not what it's there for. You don't even need to provide an email address. So easy to do. And if you go there, you'll be able to answer a question. In fact, you can see people answering their questions live right here. You can see how long have you been studying for A+ certification. 32% have said less than 3 months, 19% 3 to 6 months, 9% 6 to 9 months, 14% more than 9 months, 26% of you, over a quarter of you, already have your certification. So that should help as well. It's one of those things where if you're trying to use this and be able to learn about this content, it helps to do it at your own pace. So if you're like me, it takes certainly more than 9 months for me to take some of these certification courses. So I'm in this group. I would choose D if I was one of those. Most people, I think, finish the A+ exam, some or both of the exams, somewhere in a 3 to 6 month time frame. Usually, I would think probably around 3 months. That would work. So if you're working toward your A+ certification, welcome aboard. I've got questions today that are going to focus on the 900 series exams, the 901 and the 902. There's a little bit of overlap back to the 800 series as well. So those questions that I asked today will also apply back. Most of them apply back to the 800 series questions too. So let's talk about first the A+ exam and what you would expect on the 901 and the 902. These are two separate exams. The 800 series exams, the 801 and the 802, are listed here. It's a similar configuration for the 901 and 902, but the important part of this is you have to be able to answer both or take both exams and pass both exams. So make sure you worry towards the proper exam version. You got to study towards the 900 series or the 800 series. Make sure you pick the right ones. And make sure if you're taking the 901 and the 902 that all of your materials are written for the 900 series exams. That's important as well. Well, let's get some questions answered, shall we? I'd like to get to this. The first one looks to be kind of a networking question. Let's see if we can jump into this. The question is, you've connected to the network and you can't surf the internet. Well, that's not good. Your IP address is 169.254.228.110. Which of these is the most likely reason for this issue? Now, make sure we don't answer in the chat room. We want everybody to figure this out on their own. So make sure we are not putting those any specific answers or hints into the chat room. I have a multiple choice answer for you. And these multiple choice answers are: the SSID broadcasts are disabled, the firewall is misconfigured, the DHCP server is not working, NAT is not properly configured, or your NIC is incompatible with the network. Well, one of these has got to be the reason for this particular problem. If you think you know what the answer is, you can go to Socrative.com, click the student login, and go to room Professor Messer to be able to answer this question. A number of you are already answering this one. I've got a few in there. I'm not even going to click quite yet so we can see what the answers are. What you're going to want to do is go to Socrative.com so you can do this as well. I'm kind of easing you into some of these networking and CompTIA questions here. My goal is to kind of get at least half of you knowing what this particular answer is for this. This is kind of an easy one to start off, to kind of give you a feel for this. I think most of you should do pretty well with this one. This is where whenever I start looking at where I go with these particular answers and how I handle these, this is one where I want to be able to give you some options that you can know could be an answer, or there could be some where you just know it's not even a possibility. So this might only be one of these scenarios where you're able to not know exactly what the answer is, but you know what it isn't. And that and sometimes is most important to be able to do something like that. Very helpful to be able to have that there and have a way to step through the question. So in our case, we've got all of these answers, our IP address. We can't serve our IP address 169.254.228.10. Which of these is the most likely cause? I also try to make these sort of a multiple step question. You have to know what the answers are for this. And you can see here that we have one that is really the vast majority. 72%, 73% have said the DHCP server is not working. But I got double digits. Someone said, hey, that's not properly configured. There's our most likely reason. 9% said the firewall is misconfigured. And then we have single digits for the SSID broadcast being disabled and the NIC not being compatible with the network. Well, one of the keys for this particular question is the IP address. And that's what probably jumped out at most of you as well. The IP address is 169.254.228.110, and that should be your red flag. That should be the warning to be able to see exactly what's going on. This is called an automatic private IP address. So you may see this abbreviated as APIPA. This is where what we will call is a link local address, which means it can communicate to other devices on your local network, but it's not able to communicate outside of your network. It's not routable. There's an allocation that the IETF has applied to this. If you have an IP address that's 169.254.1.0 through 169.254.254.255, then this is an APIPA address in IP version 4. So if you have been given this address, it means that, especially if you see it immediately in your IP address, that means your machine was not able to get an address automatically from a DHCP server, and so your machine automatically assigned this IP address. And you should be able to check in the configuration of your Windows to be able to see, is this? In fact, with Windows, it even tells you very clearly, this is an auto configuration IP version 4 address, 169.254.228.109. Jumps right out at you to be able to see that in this configuration. And it should jump out at you as well. In fact, the 73% of you that answered C, the DHCP server is not working, said yes, that's exactly what happens when you're not able to get an automatic IP address from a DHCP server, and instead you get an APIPA address. So that's one where it does help very much to be able to understand not only what the IP address is, but how you got to that point. And that's really what this question was about. And the 73% of you did extremely well with that question. Well done. Let's do another question, shall we? We'll jump ahead to another one. When you turn on your computer, Windows starts in safe mode. Which of these would be the best next step? Now, this is a very common process and a very common way to ask a question on the CompTIA exams. They will give you a scenario, and then they ask you for the best next step. Now, there's certain steps you could certainly do. In fact, many of the answers might be one of the steps you would do during a troubleshooting process for this particular problem, but they're asking you what the next step would be. So it's very important that you understand what that would be when you're working through them. So in our particular set of answers, we have a number of things that might be our best next step. Would it be to reinstall the operating system? Would it be to upgrade your BIOS? Would it be to reset your file associations? Would it be to run bootrec/fixboot? Or would it be to run startup repair? So one of these is going to be a pretty good option when safe mode starts up. Which one could it possibly be for this? If you think you know the answer, don't answer in the chat room. You should go to scradup.com to the student login and go to Professor Messer Room. This is a good one to step through whenever we're working through these. Why is the second IP address reserved? Wouldn't it be the broadcast address? It's not. Well, you wouldn't be given a broadcast address. And the first and the last subnet in that API-PA range is reserved as well. They just reserved it away. They just stuck it away so you wouldn't use it. So the IP address, that list that I gave, let's see if I can go back to that list and show it to you. I'll show you that list while you're working on that problem. Let's go back to that list so we can answer that question. So here's the API-PA address. It is the 169.254 1.0 through 169.254 254 255, which is a legitimate IP address in this range because the entire range is really through an entire view of this. It actually goes through 255. You'll notice, in fact, that in this view, I'll pull this up so you can see it as well. Here's why the 255 is a legitimate host address. It's because the subnet mask, we're kind of getting into the network plus world, the subnet mask is 255.255.0.0. It is a 16-bit subnet mask. That's why the .255 is a completely legitimate host address for this. That's why. That entire range is for the hosts that are being used. So let's now jump ahead back to the question, which is this. When you start your computer, it's in safe mode. What's the deal with that? Let's see what your answers are. Well, we can see that 65% said startup repair, but 27% said run bootrec/fix boot. Well, this could really go either way. You can see the rest are single digits. Nobody said reinstall the operating system. Most of you realize that's not your first step, really, with anything. Your first step is never to reinstall the operating system. There would probably be one or two things where your first step might be to reinstall the operating system. That's about it. Upgrading your BIOS, 5%, resetting your file associations. Nobody thinks it's those. Everybody thinks it probably could be run startup repair or run bootrec/fix boot. Well, this brings up a good question. What would be the correct course? And really the key here with this question, if I scroll down, you can see it over my head here. When you turn on your computer, Windows starts in safe mode. That is the most important clue here, is that you're seeing that Windows, not only is your computer starting, it's finishing the BIOS post. It's going through its power on self-test. Everything looks fine with the hardware, so it continues to the Windows startup screen. You get the Windows splash screen. You get a Windows desktop, except the Windows desktop says it's in safe mode. So something is going on between the time that Windows starts up with its splash screen and it realizes it's not really going to be able to start Windows in a full-blown Windows session. It's going to start on safe mode. So in that particular case, we know that it can't be related to the boot records. It can't be related to the hardware power on self-test. It can't be really related to file associations. We're not even at that point yet with Windows and being able to work with the file associations. So the answer here really would be something relating to running startup repair. This is a very easy way to get things going with Windows. It's an automated process that Windows has that runs through all of the things that could be a major problem during the startup process. So this is one where if you have a problem with Windows getting started, you might be missing an NT loader, for instance. Startup repair would be a good option. If you're missing an operating system itself, this would be a good thing because it goes through the process of checking your boot sectors. If you have an MBR, it checks your MBR. If it's pointing, make sure it's pointing to the right Windows installation to start up the Windows kernel. And if you're booting to safe mode, this is something that we'll check to see what's happening during the Windows startup and is there something we can correct so that it does not start in safe mode. Startup repair is a great answer for that. So if you are ever at a point where you're trying to figure out why is this not working, startup repair is a great automated process that works exceptionally well to resolve a number of these problems automatically. So you don't have to know how to get to the command line startup. You don't have to know what you need to change in the registry. You don't have to know how to redirect Windows to a different Windows installation. This utility does a lot of that automatically for you. So if you answered E, run startup repair, 63% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. And if you are one of the 25% said run bootrec/fix boot, that would not be the correct answer because we know it's getting through the boot process. We know that it got past The boot sector, we know that is going to the right operating system. We know that it's even starting Windows. We're just in safe mode. So it would not be something relating to the boot rec in this particular case. Startup repair is covered in one of my videos in the 902. Absolutely. That slide you just saw comes directly from that 902 video where I talk about startup repair. So that's a very good example of that. So well done. If you answered E, well done with that. In answering, you knew it was safe mode. You knew that should be your first step for any of these. So let's do another question. This one is a little bit different. Let's move into the 801-901. It's a question that really applies to both. And I'm asking you about a connector type. Name this connector type and one of its most common uses. Now, one of the things you'll notice on this one is this is not a multiple choice question. This is one where I'm giving you just a blank slate. It's a fill in the blank, if you will. This is very common on the CompTIA exams now, that you might be asked a question in a number of different ways. You might be asked a multiple choice question like we're doing now, but we're also doing a number of questions about fill in the blank. There are a number of questions that might ask you to match, a number of questions that might ask you to put things in a particular order. You might be asked to configure a setting at the command line. There's a lot of different ways to ask a question and get that done. So in this case, I'm asking you for a very specific connector type. Most of you, I think, are doing pretty well with this one. I'm also, since this is fill in the blank and I'm looking at this, you probably won't be asked for one of its most common uses on the exam, but it's something that I can easily see you typing in though. And I can see exactly what's here. Yeah, don't worry about the spelling. Some of you are like, I can't spell this. That's fine. You don't have to spell it. I know what you mean. I can see on here exactly what you're putting in. You could even type it in phonetically. I would be able to figure it out. So I'm just kind of watching these go by. I'm not showing you these on the screen because some of them probably not appropriate for you to see. For those of you out there are a little bit cheeky. So I will not be showing you the actual responses, but I think most of you are getting this one absolutely right. Some of you are not. Look very closely at this. In fact, no, I don't have a bigger picture of it. That's the biggest picture I have of that. But if you're in the Socrative, you can click and it'll open up a larger picture. You can see it a little bit better. Look very closely at this so that you know exactly the type of connector it is. This is one, some of you went way back. Some of you are answering, I think you're messing with me. You're giving me an answer of a cable type that was from 25 years ago. I suspect this is not the right answer. In fact, what could this possibly be? Most of you did pretty well with this one. And I like some of you put the connector itself, but you weren't quite sure how this was used. And so we can talk about what those are. This is not a traditional Ethernet connection. Some of you have said, oh, this is for TIM-base-2, for coax connections for Ethernet, but it is not. You have to look very closely at this particular picture because it's threaded. And you can kind of see the threads that are inside of this. It's not a BNC connector. It's not one where you're pushing it in and turning it to lock it in place. It's one where you push it in and you have to constantly screw it in with those threads to be able to stay in place. These connector types are F connectors is what they're called. The F connectors that are here are something you would commonly see with cable television. It's not commonly used with traditional TIM-base-2 or Ethernet. Right, that's not a connector for ThinNet. It's not a connector for an older Ethernet connection. In fact, I might argue that this is one of the most popular network connections in use today. I think that's probably a pretty good statement because anybody who has a cable modem, you're using a cable modem internet connection, means that you're using one of these cables like an RG6 where there's a threaded connector at the end. We commonly use this for television, for video, but now we're also commonly using it for cable modem connections inside of our homes and our offices. It's very common, in fact, to see these types of connectors being used everywhere, even in very larger connections. Yeah, the F connector has been around for a very long time. We used to use it just for video with our cable television, but now the cable companies figured out how to put video, audio, and data on the same wire using the same cable. They really didn't have to change very much from our side to be able to do this. Now, if they all look the same to you, maybe one of the things you can do is have a look at my course notes. You know, all of my videos have everything inside of them for everything you would need to know. I go through all of the course information, CompTIA's own objectives, and I make videos for every single one of those objectives. So my course notes that are available are for all of the objectives. In fact, I'll show you what they look like. This is my course notes. And in fact, we were just looking at the 901 question I had for you was for specific interface types. So I'm going to scroll through these. You can see it's just chock full of information. If I look at these, here's the connector types. So the connectors that are on here are the ones that you would need to know for your CompTIA exam. I've got everything listed. Here's the ones for the network side. And in fact, the F connector right there on the network connectors that you would run into. So what I did was take really all of the important parts from my video, and I made notes and I put them into some PDFs for you. This doesn't replace your book. It doesn't replace videos. It doesn't replace the other methods you're using to study. But somebody even today sent me a note that said, I need something that just rolls all of these hours and hours of videos up into a quick reference guide that I can just surf through as I prepare for the exam. Well, I said, I've already got that. That's exactly what I have with my course notes. So make sure that you go through there and look at the course notes and understand what's there. You can find out more about these course notes at professormesser.com/A+CN. This is one where if you are also, a lot of people want to contribute to the site and help keep things running, because this is something that I'm able to provide thanks to your purchases. And this is something that also helps, I think, give you back something to use for your exam. So hopefully it works in both directions as well. Thank you for your support for these. You can find out more at professormesser.com/A+CN. Well, let's get back to the question, shall we? I have plenty here. Thanks for answering that one. In the chat room, they're going, wait a second, you said the connector. What would the connector be for? In this particular case, the F connector would only be used on coax, and it would only be used for what we're, don't worry about thinking too far into these questions and what's there. Always with the CompTIA, you need to focus on what's being asked of you for this particular question and don't read additional things into it. So here's another question. This is another kind of a connection question. One of the things that CompTIA does, especially with these questions, is they focus on particular technologies. And this one is focusing on mobile technologies. The question is, what type of connection would you expect to find on a mobile device headset? And I've given you some particular options here to choose from. Would it be RJ45? Would it be RCA? Would it be Lightning? Would it be USB? Or would it be TRRS? It's got to be one of those 5. So what type of connection would you expect to find on a mobile device headset? That's something you do have to know for the 900 series exams now, is that they go into a lot of detail about the mobile devices, even more than the 800 series. So you not only need to understand iOS from Apple, you need to understand Google Android, you need to understand the Windows Phone operating system even. And when you get into these, really helps to be able to understand how the different accessories for the devices work. You have to know that as well to be able to work through those. So all of this is in the CompTIA A+ exam objectives. If you'd like to answer these questions, you can, of course, go to Socrative.com to the student login and go to the room Professor Messer. It's one where there's a lot of different components you can have for mobile devices. I think this is a very good example of one of the things you have to know. And of course, I didn't spell it out for you to be able to do this. You have to know what all these little abbreviations are. So I did try to make it a little bit harder. However, mobile device headsets are something that are pretty universal throughout. You're going to find this particular kind of connection really on all of them. And in this particular question, I hit exactly the number I was looking for. I hit the 50% number. So 50% of you have a particular answer. That's what I'm usually shooting for these questions. And you can see in this case, the TRRS was 50% of you, but I would say really tied for second is USB and RCA. Those are two very popular connection types. Do they really apply to what we're looking at here? And of course, you've got Lightning and RJ45 in this particular case. Could be either of those. So that is one where it makes a lot of sense for knowing what you might run into. Well, mobile device headsets themselves, especially the wired headsets, allow us to not only listen to the audio that's on these mobile devices, but they also include a microphone. And that's why they have that name headset. because they do both of those to be able to work through them. If you do look at these, you'll know at the end of the connector, this wired connector, it uses something called a TRRS connector, and that stands for tip, ring, ring, sleeve. I'll show you more about what that is when I've got a breakout of what this really looks like. Now, of course, there's wireless headsets as well. There's Bluetooth. Of course, I didn't give you Bluetooth as an option, but if Bluetooth was in there, you'd have to choose either both of those connections. And of course, if that was the case, I would have told you to choose two of them. But Bluetooth was not one of the options we had. We had RJ45, RCA, Lightning USB, and TRRS. Now, on a mobile device, the TRRS looks like this. If we look very closely at the connection itself, you can see it looks a little bit different than just earphones might, which are TRS connections. You often see them referred to as TRS. And that's why it's important to know this nomenclature of TRRS, because you will often have to find the right kind of connector so that not only do the headphones work, but you also have to be able to have that microphone work as well. And that's why it's important to have that extra R in the middle to be able to send that microphone information back and forth. And it might help you, as people are saying in the chat room, well, I think we can step through this. It really does have process of elimination. RJ45 is used for networking, so it won't really be the answer there. RCA is kind of the older audio connections you might see on equipment. We also can see this on some video equipment as well, but certainly not used for mobile devices in their headsets. Would not be a Lightning connection. Lightning connection is the proprietary Apple connection that's used on their mobile devices. Currently, there are some Lightning mobile devices, but that is not what you would expect to find on a mobile device headset. Mobile device headset is going to have both earphones and a microphone, and it's going to plug in through TRRS. It would not be USB either. That is not a mobile device headset. You might, of course, charge your mobile device via USB, but you would not be using a headset through the USB. Therefore, if you really went through all of these and you still didn't even know what a TRRS was, that's all that's left. And that would be the answer here. And of course, as we know, that was the correct answer for this particular question. If you're watching these study groups for continuing education credit, then you'll want to go to either the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, and you want to be able to choose Contact Us. And in the Contact Us, you will want to put your name, your email address, specify that this is the May A+ study group, and put the special code word of TRRS. And whenever you're doing that, I'm the one who's reading through these. So if you want to put a note or put anything else in there, you can, of course, do that as well. I'll probably be processing a lot of these today. So you're welcome to send that along and work through those pieces. And send me your continuing education code word of TRRS. Let's do another question, shall we? Let's jump into these. Here's one that is something I don't like. Let's see which one of these. Which of these would be the most likely result of a DDoS? And that's how you may see this also referred to as a DDoS. This is one of the security questions that's on the A+ exam. You should be able to, of course, be able to work through these questions. I have this one set up as a multiple choice then. So let's see what our possible answers might be. Which of these would be the most likely result of a DDoS? Would it be an unauthorized access to personal information? Would it be the installation of unknown malware? Would it be that the web server is unresponsive? Would it be that there is an unauthorized person in the building? Or would it be that an account password is revealed? One of these will be an answer that would be the most likely result of a DDoS. There again is that little piece you always have to look for in the question, the most likely result, because some of these answers could possibly be the result of a DDoS, but only one of them is the most likely result of a DDoS. Make sure you go through those pieces and be able to know those answers. So if you think you know the answer, go to Socrative.com, just pop open that new tab and go to the Professor Messer room. Log in as a student, the student login, and go to Room Professor Messer. I think it's a good place to go to be able to see more of this. Let's see how I'm going to take a peek how you folks are doing with this one. Now, if you've never worked in security, you've never worked with these security details, this may be something that is very unusual for you. It may not be something very common, but in the CompTIA security section, this would be in the 902 exam, there are a number of things you must be able to understand about things like DDoS. And you have to understand when DDoS goes through this, you should, of course, be able to work through these pieces and know all of these and be able to understand them. So let's see how we did with this one. We had over 100 people already answer this question. How'd we do? Well, we're somewhere close to 50%. 59% said the web server is unresponsive. But is it really? Would a DDoS instead be this tied for second and unauthorized access to personal information, or would it be the installation of unknown malware? Could it certainly be either one of those. Only 4% said that there's an unauthorized person in the building, and only 1% said that an account password is revealed. So what would be the result of a DDoS? Well, first, let's talk about what a DDoS is. This is a distributed denial of service attack. This is one where effectively an army of computers, more than one, this is distributed. That's where the first D comes from. If it was just a denial of service attack, it would be coming from one single device. So a distributed one means usually one or two, or in many cases, many more, not just one. Many devices, an army of computers are descending upon there and be able, taking down your systems. They're using up all of your resources, all of your login resources, all of your bandwidth resources. There's a spike in traffic, so nobody else can access the services that you have. This is what the bad guys are doing with all those botnets. They take over a person's machine, and then they send messages to all these machines they've taken over to start inundating these different sites. What's nice about this from the bad guys' perspective is they can have one device send one request in. It's almost invisible to the end user, but what they'll do is get thousands of these devices to do that simultaneously. And it's something that your servers are not prepared for. To be able to have that many devices hitting them all at once. And usually these devices that are set up as botnets are infected with malware. The user has no idea this malware happens to be there, and they're going through this process of trying to understand where did I go wrong with this? What problem am I having with these pieces? You need to be able to work through those and be able to understand them. So hopefully I can give you an idea on this distributed denial of service attack of what you might run into. There are a number of ways to mitigate denial of service attacks. Some people are on the website are talking about Cloudflare, which is a very good way to do this. Cloudflare is effectively a reverse proxy. It's one where you send the request to Cloudflare. Cloudflare then evaluates this request to see if it's legitimate. Is this somebody participating in an entire group with other people, or is this a legitimate request to a web server? If it's a legitimate request, it sends it on its way, it receives the answer, and then provides that answer back to the end user. This really would be considered vandalism. This is one where somebody's really trying to take down a device. And there's many reasons to do this. It might be to take down a server that provides name services so that you could put your own name server in place and redirect people to the wrong site. Maybe it's someone who it's more of a mafia where they've said, it'd be horrible if something was to happen to your site. All you have to do is pay us some money and we'll make sure nothing happens to you. And if you don't pay the money, then they're going to send all of their botnets down to attack. You don't generally see that on most people's sites. And sometimes it's political, it's malicious. There's many reasons to go about doing a distributed denial of service attack, and it's illegal in every single one of those situations. It's never something that is legitimate or legal. If you are caught participating in a distributed denial of service attack, then you will have some legal problems that you will have to deal with. There's a number of other questions I have available for you to go through. I'm going to flip through, and we're going to go to the next question that's on our list. We're going to shift directions away from security and away from the network to what everybody tells me is their favorite topic, printers. I always like to get a printer question in sometime during the study group, and here's ours for this week. It's fortunately a multiple choice question. So the question is, a user is trying to print but receives the message access denied. Which of these would be the most likely cause of this issue? Would it be not my face? Would it be this? Here we go. It would be this. It would be each user must log into the printer before printing. It would be that the printer is in a locked room. It might be that the print server permissions aren't allowed with this user's credentials. It could be that the printer is not compatible with the user's operating system, or the printer is not part of the Windows domain. So which one of these could this be? Did I not give the answer for DDoS? The answer for DDoS was, oh, I guess I didn't. I can't skip back in my Socrative, but it's the one where the web server became unresponsive. It's when our answer is C. Yeah, it was C. The web server is unresponsive. You just inundated it with so much information. You're not leaking out information. You're not leaking out personal information. Your PII, or personally identifiable information, was not released. Nobody was able to get access to your login credentials. It just took over a machine and just completely overwhelmed it. And this type of thing happens to everybody's server. My web server receives these types of attacks occasionally. And I of course, have ways to mitigate it as well. Everybody who runs a web server has ways to work around these particular problems, or at least identify them so that they can start making changes to where the problems might be. So access denied. Maybe you know what the answer is on this one. Let's see if we happen to know what this one is. Which one? Users trying to print receives access denied. What would be the most likely cause of this issue? This is one I think many of us have gotten before, and we need to understand this as well when we work through it. Let's see how we did. In fact, most of you said the print server permissions aren't allowed with this user's credentials, although 7% of you said printer's not part of the Windows domain. Would that really be causing an access denied? Let's find out. There's a number of things about printers that really have nothing to do with printing. They have to do with the network or their permissions that will allow you just to get to the point of printing. And I think this is one of the things that complicates the printing process, is that there's so many steps. You've got an application, you got a print driver, you have a print spooler, you have a network, you have a print server, and then you have the printer itself. Any one of those things could go wrong. Any one of those things often do go wrong. So if that's the case, how are we going to solve this problem? Now, this particular problem, access denied, is one you may have run into before. It's not an issue of no connectivity. That's not our issue. We're able to communicate with the printer. In fact, it told us, nope, you can't. In fact, with Windows, you can set up permissions of who can print to a printer and who cannot. You often see this in environments where you don't just have laser printers, which are relatively inexpensive to use. It might be a firm that has a very large plotter or a very large electrostatic printer, or these very large production printers. If you were to print something out, it's many tens or hundreds of dollars on a printout. So of course, you're going to set up permissions on the network so that nobody can print to that printer except the people who are absolutely authorized to do so. So there is a very good example of knowing where the permissions are configured. So in your Windows configuration, you would go to the properties of the printer, go to the security tab, and be able to allow or disallow users or groups to be able to print to the printer, manage the printer itself, or even manage documents on this device. Very helpful to be able to work through that. This is one where if you're working with printers at all, there's an entire section of the 901 exam that really goes into printers, and part of the troubleshooting section at the end of the 901 talks about troubleshooting printers. That's one of the things I really like about the 900 series exam, is that there is a very strong delineation now between the 901 and the 902. What you learn on the 901, you are also tested on with troubleshooting on the 901. What you learn on the 902, you're tested on with troubleshooting on the 902. They don't really have a lot of overlap between the two like you would see on the 800 series exams. To me, that makes the 900 series exam a little bit more easier to work with because you can really focus and concentrate on one exam and then shift your gears and concentrate on another exam. Let's do another question, shall we? That printer question wasn't so bad. You folks did really well. Those of you that answered the 91%, the print server permissions aren't allowed with the user's credentials. So you would go into the print server permissions. You would allow that user, if they have access to that printer, and then they'd be able to take care of that. Very easy to be able to get there. It's very simple to know that once you've worked through it one time. All you have to have is that one moment where you have not been able to access the printer. You've had this problem, and now you've worked through it. So well done with that one. You folks did really well with that particular question. So here's another one. This one is definitely a 902 question. Which of the following would you most commonly use? In which of the following would you most commonly use commandlets? Which of the following would you most commonly use commandlets? There's something you won't see on this other one, commandlets. So what would it be? Would it be you would use these with a Windows automated installation script? You would use these during an application setup process. You would use these in a PowerShell command line. You would use these for managing a print queue. There's printers again. And then you would use these during the installation of operating system patches. So one of these would be where you would most commonly use commandlets. This is another one of those questions, by the way, where more than one of these could be a possible answer, but only one of these is where you would most commonly use commandlets. That's exactly where you want to go with these and being able to work through them. So make sure this is a 902 question, being able to work through them. You want to be able to step through and understand all of these and being able to understand exactly what you would run into with commandlets, because it is something you would find on the 902 exam. If you're taking the 802, it's not on the 800 series exams. You're not going to have this particular topic on there. This is definitely a 900 series topic and being able to work through those. So make sure that you go through these pieces and for the 900 series and really know what the objectives are for the exam. Because if you don't have the objectives, you may not be able to answer all of these when they're thrown at you and be able to work through them. Yeah, just take a guess. This is like you're on the exam. You don't have Google available to you. In fact, you really don't have Google available to you in most cases. You're in the middle of a meeting. You have to make a decision about what's going to be right. You don't have time to sit there and Google. That's one of the reasons you have to memorize a lot of this information, because you may be asked to configure a server, configure a network, fix a printer problem. Well, I don't know. Let me Google. Well, it's going to take a while for you to figure out. Maybe they need to find somebody who's worked with this problem before. This is one where if you're ever working through this, it's very useful to be able to break these down. So let's see how we did with this and being able to work through these. I think that in which of the following would you most commonly use commandlets? Let's see how we did. Okay, well, just over 50, much over 50%, 68% said a PowerShell command line, but 18% said a Windows automated installation script. Kind of sounds like something that would be used there. And then we have single digits for during an application setup process and during the installation of operating system patches. Nobody said managing a print queue. What? What is it with you folks in printers? You just don't even like printers at all. You're not happy with the whole printer idea, are you? Well, commandlets is something you would find in PowerShell. PowerShell is something that you can install onto previous versions of Windows as a separate installation. This is something you would find included with Windows 8 and Windows 8.1, really later versions of Windows, because it's a way to really step through and understand more about how to use Windows at a power user level. You really get into the details. Really, it's usually network administrators and people like us that would be going through this and using PowerShell. PowerShell extremely powerful because it talks directly to the Windows operating system itself. A lot of powerful capabilities. Things you normally would not be able to do at a command line are part of PowerShell. It is as much a part of Windows as the graphical part of Windows is. In some cases, perhaps even more so. You can extend this command line function using a scripting process called commandlets. This is one where I have can set up an entire program to step through a number of processes, make some decisions, determine what the output is, and then react to whatever that output happened to be. It's an extremely powerful way to get through this process. If you know PowerShell, you can do almost anything with the operating system. If you're trying to automate a process, you're trying to do system administration, you're trying to administer an Active Directory domain, you want to be able to do something and automate it. And part of our process as technical people is constant automation. We want to be able to step through and automate a lot of what we're doing. So we're often scripting, we're often creating a process that's going to check in every so often and make sure a service is operating the way we would expect. And you can do a lot of that through PowerShell. So these commandlets, if you're one of the people that answered C, a PowerShell command line at 69%, you got that one absolutely right. It would not be part of a Windows automated installation script as its most common use. The Windows installation scripts have their own language associated with them, and it's not through something called a commandlet. It would not be during an application setup process, same scenario there, and it would not be during the installation of operating system patches, and apparently not to help manage a print queue in its most common use. But interestingly, there are some great PowerShell functions that do let you manage a print queue. So if I had said, in which of the following can you use commandlets, that would have been one of the answers. I would have asked for multiples of those. And it's a very nice thing to know. If you know PowerShell, and you can tell people about what you know with PowerShell, it makes you that much more marketable, and you're going to be able to use and manage the operating system so much easier. Let's do another question. Let's hop into another one. I asked you a question earlier that showed a picture, and I wanted to know more about that picture. You may get more of these on the CompTIA exam. So this is one where I have another picture for you. What interface is this? What is that? Don't answer in the chat room. Instead, go to Socrative.com, to the Professor Messer Room, and you can answer. And in this case, it's not a fill in the blank. Oops, I don't have the right question in there. I just asked you the question, so you probably got an extra one thrown in there for this. I didn't put the fill in the blank on this, so you're not going to be able to answer this in Socrative. So don't just ignore this. What did I do with Socrative this time? What was I thinking? So don't do that, and don't do that. We're going to just... How's that for editing on the fly? What interface is this? Oh, don't do the student login either. Just tell me what interface that is. Some of you, in fact, maybe this is the time we answer in the chat room. Let's do that. Instead of Socrative, let's see what nonsense this is going to be. So in the chat room, if you think you know what this interface is, and I'm looking for the interface, not the type of media inside of it, not the physical thing that's in the middle. I want to know what interface that is. What is that in those pieces working through these? I'll make it bigger on the screen so you can really see it. So there you go. There is a specific name for this. And this is not, I guess technically this sort of is this, but there's a different name for the A+. It's not ST. It is a fiber connection, but it is not ST. It kind of looks like it could be ST, but it's not. Has a similar feel. Looks almost like an SC, doesn't it? I almost kind of told you SC, but it's not an SC connector either. It has this big connector on the end of it. And it's not LC. So what is, in fact, not a network connection in the traditional sense. It is red. So Rob in the chat room did get that one correctly. It is a red connector. You get half credit, Rob. I'm just going to give it to you since we're sort of going off the cuff here. Some of you say digital audio. It's not SC. It's not LC. Yes, you can't. No, in this case, we are wanting to answer in the chat. Yes, answer in the chat. So some of you can absolutely go through and answer this particular one in the chat. I want to know, not MTRJ, correct? It is not a traditional network connection. Some of you, I think, are getting this one. Oh, somebody, I think, said the right answer. Finally, in the chat of what it really is. There's a specific name for this digital cable connection link, and it is a TOS link. Toshiba link. TOS link is what that is. You may see it labeled as a SPDIF type connection, but the type of connector it is in here really is a Toshiba link or a TOS link. It is optical fiber, though. So those of you that were answering, is that SC? Is it ST? You're going through your fiber connectors as you should, but you should know that even in consumer electronics, we're using fiber. And it's not for the traditional Ethernet connection either. Now, why would we use optical fiber for audio? Because as human beings, we just love the crisp, clean audio. And there's so many things that we are running in our home entertainment system that can create interference. And of course, copper cables tend to collect that interference and bring it right into the speakers. So if we can connect we've got this beautiful high definition Blu-ray video. The last thing we want is to be watching this beautiful video screen on a 4K monitor, and then the audio sounds like this. Nobody wants that. Or you got interference because you're trying to watch the movie. Instead, you get a perfectly clear cable connection with no possibility for electromagnetic interference because you're using this over a fiber connection. It is kind of a short link, isn't it? You would think with fiber that you'd be able to go the length of your house and go all the way down the way. But in this particular case, This audio connection is being fed through what is probably the least expensive method to send this. And most often it's infrared, or not infrared, but a red light. It's an LED light that is sending this information. And actually with Toslink, it might even be a white light that's being used. So a higher frequency for that one. You never want to look at to the end of it, but it's one that is using a very simple light source. It's not using laser beams. Because of that, it's a lower power. It only goes a certain distance, like 10 meters, but 10 meters for something that is your home entertainment system. You aren't putting your Blu-ray player on one side of the room and your television on the other. Those are usually very close to each other to be able to do that. And so that's why, in this case, it's a Toslink. If we look at it again, there it is, big Toslink connector to be able to work through there. And that's obviously on the 901 exam, that is one of the type of connectors that you will need to know. So very good to be able to work through those. I think we have time for one more question. So let's get into this last question. This one we will not answer in the chat room. This one, I think I do have a Socrative question for you. Do I? Yes, I do. So if you're in Socrative, you'll be able to see this question. Which of these would be the best choice for encrypting a set of folders on your hard drive? So this is one that you do want to go to Socrative.com to the room named Professor Messer and be able to answer one of these. It's a multiple choice, thankfully. Is it BitLocker? Is it VPN? Is it DLP? Is it EFS? Is it HTTPS? Which of these would be the best choice for encrypting a set of folders on your hard drive? This is another one, by the way. More than one of these could be right, but I'm asking you for the best choice. Maybe you know which one of these would be the best choice. If you think you do, go to Socrative.com and be able to do this. Encrypting a set of folders on your hard drive. This would be one where whenever you're trying to work through these problems, it becomes a little more difficult to be able to step through what would be the best choice, because there's so many things you might want to pull from to be able to do this. Well, that might be the best choice for this, but I think overall you should use something else. Well, that wasn't the question. The question is asking you, what's the best choice for just doing this one thing? So you really do have to look at these questions as this self-contained entity that's not asking you for a broader perspective of the world and being able to work through it. It's really asking you for something that's a very different. No answering in the chat room. We are instead answering this on Socrative. Make sure you go through and answer them on Socrative. I think this is one where whenever you start working through these and trying to get the answers, being able to take multiples of these answers, possible answers, and get rid of them might help. So maybe some of these would be able, yes, BSOD, you can get onto them now. So this is one where maybe you should be able to figure out what it isn't, and that might be able to help you know what it is. Which of these would be the best choice for encrypting a set of folders on the hard drive? You can go to Socrative.com and be able to do this. And I think we're torn a bit with this answer because I see this. Remember I said I wanted 50%? Well, in this case, I got 50% that are one answer and 50% that are the other answer, and then none of the others, or very few of the others. So one of these is going to be the best choice for encrypting a set of folders on your hard drive, and the best choice for just encrypting folders, a set of folders, not all of your folders, but a set of folders on your hard drive, is going to be EFS. This is the encrypting file system. It's built into NTFS. So if your system has been formatted and is using the NTFS file system, then it is looking right at the hard drive itself and taking individual files and allowing you to encrypt individual files and individual folders. Very useful because it's kind of built into Windows. It's part of the operating system. It's part of your file system. It's actually encrypting it in the file system itself. Makes it very easy to work with. Generally, the password, the username and password that you're using to log in is what's being used to encrypt the key. And obviously, if you're doing any type of encryption, there's a key somewhere that is used, and it's this username and password. That's why if somebody changes, if you forget your password and somebody administratively changes your password, suddenly you won't have any access to your encrypted data because you've now changed the username and password, and those two things together are what created the encryption key to begin with. This works in a lot of different operating systems. Vista Business Enterprise and Ultimate, Windows 7 Professional Enterprise and Ultimate, and Windows 8 and 8.1 Pro and Enterprise. That wasn't that tricky. That was pretty straightforward. In fact, the tricky part was the question itself, where I'm asking you which of these would be the best choice for encrypting a set of folders. So you have to look at these questions, as I mentioned, in just that world. I'm asking you to perform one particular function, and you have to be able to drill into that one function. So if you're one of the folks that said EFS, 51% of you got that one absolutely right. Why would it not be BitLocker? And I think for most of you, BitLocker actually would be the best choice, wouldn't it? Because it encrypts your entire drive. It encrypts the operating system, it encrypts all of your files, it encrypts all of your folders. BitLocker is great. BitLocker is a fantastic encryption method that many people are using to protect everything on the drive, which means you can pull that drive out, you can put it in another machine, and you still won't have access to that information. But it encrypts everything. BitLocker encrypts everything on your system, and in this case, I'm asking you the best choice for encrypting a set of folders on your hard drive, which itself implies there are things you might not want to encrypt on this hard drive. So EFS in this case would be the right choice. BitLocker, I see where you are going with that, but for this particular question, not the right answer. Now, if you're wondering where I'm getting all this information from and all of these topics and all of these things you have to know, and where did Toslink come from, and why did I have to know about printer configurations and how the printers are managed at the user level, and you're trying to find all of this information, it's already available for you in the CompTIA exam objectives. This should be your first document you read when you're studying for your CompTIA exam. If you have not downloaded the CompTIA exam objectives, you are doing yourself a disservice. Make sure you go to Google and just type in CompTIA exam objectives, or go to professormesser.com/objectives. And you should be able to download your A+ exam objectives and use them as a checklist. When people ask me, and they ask me every day, how do I know when I'm ready to take my exam? And the answer is, have you gone through the exam objectives and checked off everything? If you can check off 90 to 95% of what's in this exam objectives, you're going to pass your exam. It's all in there. CompTIA does an amazing job at making this information available. And it's one where I'm going to find it on my exam objectives. Let's go to the Google machine, and I'm going to type in, for instance, 220.901 file type :PDF, which is my shortcut for finding anything that might be a PDF associated with this. And here we are. The A+ certification exam objectives. Here's what I mean by this. I'm going to scroll through and make sure you read that first part. But I'm going to scroll just to the section 1.1, given a scenario, configure settings, and use BIOS/UEFI tools on a PC. I need to know how to do firmware upgrades and flash the BIOS. I need to know about BIOS component information, including RAM, hard drive, optical drive, CPU. I need to know about BIOS configurations and a boot sequence. I need to know about enabling and disabling devices, the date and the time, the clock speeds, the virtualization support, BIOS security, which include password, drive encryption, TPM, LoJack, secure boot, and so on, and so on, and so on. People tell me all the time, this doesn't have enough detail in it. And I ask them, what in the world are you reading? This has everything in it. It tells you everything you need to know. If you can check out, it tells you should know the date and time in the BIOS. This is very specific. So make sure you can go through this list and check off everything. And if you know everything in here, you're ready to take your exam and you're going to pass. It's all in here. So make sure you go through that process whenever you're working through all of these pieces. It's really going to help you when you get down to the details. Well, I do one of these study groups every month. And so you can go back and look at the archive of study groups on professormesser.com. But of course, you might want to tune in live. If you're watching this on the replay, it's a lot of fun to tune in live, be able to participate with Socrative or the chat room if I forget to type something into Socrative. And you can absolutely look at the next study group. We're going to do one on June the 1st of 2016, which is at about a month from now. And you'll be able to see all of our live events. If this is after June the 1st of 2016, you can, of course, see all of the study groups. I do A+, I do Network Plus, I do Security Plus. You can find it all at professormesser.com/calendar. Wow, we've come to the end of another study group. You can, of course, find me all over the internet, professormesser.com/Twitter, professormesser.com/YouTube, professormesser.com/Instagram. Somebody said I should do a Snapchat. I'm open for that. Nobody really wants that. It would be sad, wouldn't it? A+ course notes at professormesser.com/A+CN. Of course, the calendar has everything you would ever want to find on it. If you're here for the live event, our first hour is sort of over for the study group, but stick around. I'm going to open up the phone lines. You can, of course, ask questions in the chat room. I kind of open it up to any topic, and you can, of course, participate there with what we're doing for at least until my voice goes out. We just sort of keep the camera on and keep things rolling because it's kind of fun to do it that way. If you do have to leave, I understand time is short. I appreciate you attending. Thanks for being here live. We hope to see you on the next study group. We'll talk to you then. Thanks, everyone. Wow, I think I need to take a sip of something to drink. What happened there? I missed a whole Socrative thing going on there where I just completely didn't have something available on the screen. I'm not sure what that was about. Let's get the phone lines up and running. I've got Skype here somewhere. And where's my... I'll host a show. Let's host a show, everyone. Let's start the show. My show has started. And since the show started, I can probably put in the phone number. And I need to call into my phone line. And
thank you for calling Call-In Studios.
Oh, you're welcome for me calling, whatever this is. Now I have to type in a thing. What is it? I have to type this in and this.
Enter your 6 digits.
It there by 6. Okay. I'm going to type in this. This is gripping live stream stuff, isn't it?
Host. You are now in the host room.
I am now in the host room. So if you'd like to call, you're welcome to do this call directly. Toll free at 1-855-785-RJ45. If you're calling on Skype, it's free on Skype as well. +1 855-785-7545. Or just ask in the chat room. You don't have to call. You can simply ask in the chat room, kind of watching this. The next study group in June is on the 1st. There we go. Yeah, what was the code? Yeah, you're going to have to watch to be able to know what the code was for the study group. That was the whole point of knowing the code, was that you need to absolutely listen in to the study group. Not only that, I tell you a certain process you have to know. The code for the continuing education was given earlier in the study group. You have to know it. There is also a process you have to follow. If you don't follow that process, you don't get the continuing education. So it's something you have to be here for the entire study group to be able to do that. I do love my job. Are you kidding? I sit here in my studio and I make stuff. I make videos. I make study guides. I talk to you on a live stream. I have all these toys. This is great. Who wouldn't want to do this? It is a lot of fun. It's one of those things where I used to do this and have another job. I used to work in the networking and security area, and I would do that during Monday through Friday, and then at night and on Saturday and Sunday I would come here and do this. Somebody asked earlier today, they were so used to going to the Saturday study groups, and they said, hey, you stopped doing the Saturday study groups. Why'd you stop doing that? I said, so I don't have to do a study group on Saturday is why. When I was able to do this full time, I can do these during the week, which makes my weekends a little nicer. My family likes it a little better. They're able to see me. We're able to do fun stuff on the weekend. So that helps as well. Well, there are not a lot of free sites for performance-based questions per se. But some folks, I'm going to the phones just a moment. There are some sites like mine that provide you with everything you would need to know to be able to answer a performance-based question. A performance-based question is just another way to ask. It's just not a multiple choice. It's a fill in the blank. It's a scenario you have to solve. We talked earlier about someone who couldn't print. Well, how would you add them to the list of available users for the printer? There, I just made you a performance-based question. So now go do that. Go to Windows, figure out how to get to the security tab of the printer and how to add somebody in who's on your network so that they can print. There you go. So I should write that down to be able to do that and being able to work through them. Let's get to the phones, though. We've got a call from the 616 area code. Are you there, caller? Caller, are you there?
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
There he is. Hey, what's your name?
My name is Richard LeGrand.
Hey, Richard.
Jr.
Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Hello, I have a question. How do I prepare for the 802? I've been studying. I have the 2 exam books.
Yeah.
And I have the how do you you break it down for me, but when I read the book and I just like when you gave the example for BitLocker encryption, I just think encryption, so that's the answer for BitLocker.
Right.
But it's actually EFS. But so I'm saying, like, how do I study for looking at the book, and how do I prepare myself? I know you talked about getting the exam objectives, but do you just go through there and read off of that and learn about it?
That I think that's a very good way to do it because you're assured of going through every single one of the topics. But have you already taken the 801?
No, I haven't, not just yet.
But have you studied for the 801?
I've been studying for 801 for the past 4.5 months.
Okay, so you've probably seen it's almost a different kind of test between the 801 and the 802 because the 801 is so focused on interfaces and cables, and there's some networking in there, and there's a little bit of mobile devices, but there's nothing relating to Windows in the 801. And then you shift gears to the 802, and it's like a completely different world of content because you have to know everything about Vista and Windows 7. And if the 802, you have to know about Windows XP. You have to be able to understand where all of these different things are in the operating system. And instead of using a multimeter like with the 801, you're now using a mouse for the 802. And I think it's a different way of having to think about the exam. And you run into these scenarios like you are where there's a lot of content and there are many different places. And I really advise if you're going into the 802, my number one is always make sure you have the exam objectives and go through the exam objectives and use them as a checklist. But more than the 801, certainly the 802 almost requires that you do some hands-on. So get your hands on Windows XP, Windows Vista, or Windows 7, hopefully all three of those if you can. If you're working on the 902, you'll obviously need Windows 8 or 8.1, and be able to go through the operating system and understand how to do the things that are listed in the exam objectives. I didn't have time today to even go through the GTS Learning Live Labs. That's also something you can find on the live page, and you can have a look at those. Those are labs. They were already set up online. So maybe that would be an option.
Oh, you talk about the labs you said to go through?
Yeah, there's
where you do the practice sheets.
Well, these are live online live machines that are already running Windows XP. They're already running Windows 7, and it steps you through a step by step. How do you set up encryption for these folders? And you get to use it online. You almost get that muscle memory of using EFS. Oh, I see how to do this encryption now for the folders. Now I know how to answer that question if it comes up again.
Okay.
That might be worth looking at. And you can get an hour of that for free by following the link that is on my website at professormesser.com/live. There's a link there to the live labs. And you can try it out for free. You scroll down to the bottom of that page and give contact information, and they'll set you up an account, and you can just try it out, see if that's something that might work for you. But hands-on. Get as much hands-on as you can.
All right.
Thanks
I'll do that, and I thank you for taking my call. And
Absolutely.
I will be trying to get it done before June 30th.
Yes, you have a bit of a deadline, so good luck. Let us know how it goes.
All right, thank you.
Take care. There is it's a tight time frame, isn't it? To try to get all this done before less than 2 months now. We're really tight in it. Let's go to 480 area code. Are you there, caller?
Yeah, good morning, Professor Messer.
Hi, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Rajiv.
Hey, Rajiv, thanks for calling.
Oh, you're welcome. Professor, how I can purchase a competitive exam voucher?
Do you want to purchase an exam voucher? Are you looking for a discount?
No, if it is a discount, it's okay. Otherwise, how I can do that whole thing?
It's kind of a weird process, isn't it? There's a couple of ways that you can purchase and get the exam, be able to sit for the CompTIA exam. And just getting and purchasing and getting to your seat in the exam seems to be kind of a convoluted process online. There's two ways to do it. In most places around the world, there's one organization that handles the testing, and you can buy your seat for the exam at Pearson VUE, which is who handles the testing part for CompTIA. If you go to the Pearson VUE website and you register there, you can buy you can reserve a time and purchase right there on the same site. There's no discounts associated with that, though. You don't get any deals. There's no packages available. You're really just buying a seat to sit for the exam. If you go to the CompTIA marketplace, this is CompTIA's website where they sell vouchers. So they will sell you a ticket that you then take to Pearson VUE, and you give your ticket number to them, and they give you a seat. So you're not buying your test from Pearson VUE. You're instead buying it from CompTIA. And when you do that, CompTIA has the option to discount a few things. If you go to professormesser.com/vouchers, there's a 10% voucher there. But you can also go to the CompTIA marketplace and purchase multiple vouchers, or purchase a voucher that comes with a retake voucher just in case, kind of an insurance policy that's almost half the price of having to take the test again. They have other combinations of things they bundle together there. But that's the two processes. You can either buy it directly from Pearson VUE or whoever is providing the test in your geography or your country, or you can go to the CompTIA marketplace and then buy a voucher that they email to you that you then can put in on the Pearson VUE or the testing website. Kind of not as convoluted as I made it sound at the beginning, but it is multiple steps with multiple organizations. But the process tends to work pretty well. I haven't heard anybody having any enormous problems with the voucher process. So it's a good way to save a little money just by buying the vouchers in one place and then handing it to take the test somewhere else.
If I go to the Professor Messer, then where I have to go? I have to go to the professormesser.com, then go to the buy a voucher or something?
Yeah, there's professormesser.com. I'll show it on the screen for those of you watching, /vouchers. And the vouchers page has on it vouchers that are coming from GTS Learning. I have on here, here's all the chat. Hi, everybody. Hi, thanks, you're welcome. Here's everybody sending me chat messages. Okay, so here you can see it has a 10% off any CompTIA voucher, has the code currently GTS 2016, and then it gives you instructions right there at the bottom in red on what to do. It's for individual vouchers. This discount, unfortunately, you can't buy bundles of information with the discount. You can purchase as many as you need, but you got to purchase one at a time. It works anywhere in the world. You have to go to the CompTIA store, and I've got a link right there that takes you to the CompTIA store from my website, and this is what it looks like, and you can purchase the vouchers from there. So a couple clicks to get to where you need, but that's what you do.
And this is $199, or this is more than that? $199 means like a whole things is $199, like 801 and 802 is $199.
Unfortunately,
how much
each exam needs a voucher. So each exam is going to be in the United States. The full price for the exam is $199, and so you would need 2 of those to take the A+ exam.
Okay. So 801 and 802, right?
Correct.
I have to take 2 vouchers.
Yeah, as long as you're planning to get both of those done before June the 30th. Otherwise, you should be doing the 900 series.
Yeah. So just question is like each of those means like 801 is $199 and 802 is $199.
Yes,
That's my
sir.
question,
801 is $199 and 802 is $199.
Okay, and one more question about the performance-based question.
Okay.
One day I heard about in your study group that first go to the multiple choice, then come back for the performance-based question. Is it the right way to do that?
In fact, there were a number of people on my website just this week who took a CompTIA exam, and I think 2 or 3 people even told me this week that is so much a better way to do it for them. One of the nice things about the CompTIA exams is that you can hop to any question you want at any time. You can hop to the last question, you can hop to the middle of the exam, and you can move back and forth throughout all the questions. Not all manufacturers' certification exams allow this. If you were to take, for instance, a Cisco exam, the Cisco exams require you to do question 1, you click go ahead, you go to question 2. You can't go back and you can't jump forward. You have to go in their exact order. But CompTIA exams allow you to jump around as much as you want. At least that's the way they're doing it and have done it for a number of years. And what their recommendation was, exactly what you said, is skip the performance-based questions because they give them to you at the beginning of the exam. Go directly to the multiple choice exam, part of the exam, finish the multiple choice, and it will jog your memory over some of the things that you need to know that you can then use when you start working through the performance-based questions at the beginning. You just have to be very careful about how much time is left on the exam. But I thought that was a pretty good tip myself, Rajib.
All right, thank you. Any other advice for passing the exam?
Get your exam objectives, use them as a checklist, get a good book, sometimes maybe two, use the videos, take some good notes, and you'll do just fine.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Rajib.
that's all.
Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
There's a lot to the exam and working through those pieces. The CompT exams are so broad. There's so much you have to know that it gets almost ridiculous in the amount of content, it seems. But once you start encapsulating it all down, it becomes a lot easier to work through. Especially, I think the exam objectives, they keep you sane. I use the exam objectives when I'm creating my video series. And so it's nice that I can start checking these things off. Yep, finished that one. Yep, got that one done. Yep, finished that one. And you can do exactly the same thing when you're studying for the exam and step through and study and make sure all of those are there too. Makes it just so much easier to work through it that way. Let's go back to the phone lines if I can find the right link on my screen and go to the 559 area code. Let's turn up the volume here. Hi, are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hello.
Hey, well, you sound like a Cylon, but I think we can make it.
Hi, I'm Aidan. I just wanted to ask very quickly. Obviously, the CompTIA A+, M+, these sorts of certifications are good ways to begin. But how important do you think a sort of college or university education is in progressing further in the industry?
Boy, what a timely question, because someone was talking about this the other day. I think it was in the CompTIA subreddit. And this comes up all the time. And I think people may put them in the wrong categories sometimes because they have a complete, I think there are three things, a minimum of three things you really need to grow professionally. You need experience. And I think for most people, I think some people will say experience is the key, and it certainly can be. There are some cases where experience actually is not the key, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So you need experience. Obviously, if you're in college, you don't have one of these jobs, you're not in the industry yet, this may not be something you have. The other piece you would want to have is some formal education. This may be a 2-year degree. It may be a 4-year degree. It may be what we traditionally call a vocational degree, although I see sort of that world is evolving as we're starting to see these things happen, because I don't necessarily think that you have to have a 4-year degree to be a good administrator or architect of a network. As somebody who's worked in IT and in technology in general for many, many years, I work with some people who didn't have a college degree and they made millions. So it's one of those things where you just have to know what you need to know. But a formal degree looks very good if you want to go into management, if you want to be able to run a business. A lot of employers like to be able to see a 2 and especially a 4-year formal degree on someone's resumes or their CV. And lastly is the certifications. It's the other pieces you put with that. There's other things, of course, that are good to have, things that you do with organizations, maybe volunteering that you do, other things you pepper into your curriculum vitae. But the third piece that I tend to focus on is the certifications. Each one of those things stands by itself. There is a value to each one of those, and neither of those can be swapped out and replaced for the other as a one-for-one. Because a lot of people ask me, I've decided I don't want to go to a 4-year college. I'm instead going to get certifications. What do you think of that? And my answer always is, first, you're comparing apples and oranges, and there are things you might want to do in the future that will require a 4-year degree that you will not have if you just go to get certifications. It's really depends ultimately, however, on the employer. And I mentioned at the beginning of this very long explanation as this is turning into, I mentioned that some employers don't want someone with experience because especially in an entry-level position, because they don't have to pay you a premium. You don't know this information yet, but we will train you. So we want to put you in a position where maybe you only have a certification, or maybe you're just out of college, or maybe you have no certifications whatsoever. and I'm going to hire you specifically because you don't have those things, and I will train you and I will get you those certifications. And if it works out, we'll keep you here and we'll give you more money, but I can start you at the very low end, and that saves me money on my budget, which I can't argue with. That's not a bad business strategy. Some employers prefer that you have a degree, that you already have a long list of certifications, because they don't have time to train you. They want to get you in. They want you to be knowledgeable from the very beginning, and they want you to have an impact on whatever your job's going to be. So what I tell people is that certifications and education and experience is great to have. And in some cases, it doesn't matter at all, which at the end of the day, Aiden, doesn't actually answer anybody's question, I realize, but it just is going to depend on what you want to be able to do and what employers are looking for when they're ready to hire you. Hopefully that's given you at least a little bit of perspective in my mind of what people are looking for. There's no real solid answer that I can give you to answer that particular question, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay. So I see what you're saying. It's not quite as black and white as one's as good as one's better.
Right.
So yeah, I get what you're saying.
But it certainly is topical. It is a constant question in the industry. It's something that I think is evolving all the time. I think you can start to see now over the last 10 years or so, 4-year degrees have really changed. How people look at 4-year degrees, they've gotten a 4-year degree, and at the end of it, nobody wants to hire them because the 4-year degree they have isn't something that employers have been looking for, or they haven't been able to get the jobs because the jobs haven't been there because of the economy. There's so many different things that come into play. I think my personal perspective is you should get as much on your curriculum vitae, as much on your resume as humanly possible that you can present to an employer, and you should have an idea of what you want to be able to do. And ultimately, I think in the industry, knowing people in the industry actually is the most important thing above any of those. If you have friends that work in the industry, if you've made relationships with people at other companies, that really is one of the best ways to do it. And I often will say in my study groups that go out and join a local Microsoft user group, join a Cisco user group, join a VMware user group, join one of these user groups that fits with what you're interested in, and meet the people that go there. Just don't go and sit in the back. Go meet these folks. Hi, what's your name? Here's who I am. Where do you work? What do you do? If I wanted a job doing this in your organization, what would you expect me to have on my resume? And have them tell you. And then they meet you. And if you show up for a resume, you show up for an interview with your resume, they go, oh yeah, I know you. We met at the user group. That goes a long way to getting these jobs, more than I think most people even realize. So that may be you didn't specifically ask about it, but that's my sort of tip of the moment. If you're really trying to break down what is the biggest impact, it may be things we don't even talk about, which are those relationships.
Okay, so you're saying it's not just what you know, it's who you know as well.
There's a reason that that's a saying, and it's because in so many cases, it's absolutely true.
All right, okay. All right, good stuff, right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Aiden. It's one where I know that I've gotten, let me think about the jobs that I've gotten throughout my career. The first job I got, I didn't know anybody. I was hired at a low level to be effectively someone who does some basic computer delivery and repair / upgrade. The second job I got with a help desk was because they knew me from that other job. I met the people. There was a relationship there. I got to know them. My third job I knew because I worked with people who used to work at the job where I was. Again, relationships. I think if I go through every single one of these, there's only been... see me counting the jobs I've had. The ones that I can probably think of, two of all of the jobs that I've had, I can think of maybe two where I didn't really know anybody. And I had to walk in. The last job I had, which was probably one of the best ones, I worked in security. Nobody where I was going to work knew who I was, but somebody who just gotten hired there knew me and said, no, you have to hire this guy. It's one where when you have somebody inside who knows you, knows what you're capable of, and says, no, that's who you need to hire, that goes a long way. So people who are strangers to me, they trusted him and said, okay, we're gonna give this guy a shot, see if he knows anything. And I guess it worked out okay with those pieces. Let's go back to the phones. I'm sorry. Those of you who are holding, I thank you for holding. I'm sorry some of you had to drop off in there, but you've been holding 9 minutes. You've been so patient. The 94. Let me send Aiden back to the queue. The 843 area code. Are you there, caller?
Yeah. Hey, Messer. Wow, this is crazy. You're like a god among men to my class.
Well, you've clearly not spoken
yeah.
to Mrs. Professor Messer. She would tell you differently.
I'm in a work-based program at my school.
Nice.
And all we do, like all day, is just watch your videos.
I don't know if that's good or bad. That doesn't sound like work to me.
We run around the school occasionally and fix stuff.
There's a little bit of work
involved. We keep
involved.
it pretty well maintained.
That's good.
Anyway, I took the test a couple weeks ago. I took the 801, bombed it. There was the simulations weren't hard, but just the basic memorization stuff I had trouble with.
There's a bit of there's a style, there's kind of a cadence to the exam that not only when you take it for the first time are you having to struggle through knowing the content, but then you also have to kind of figure out how they're asking for it. And I get that. So what part of it, we obviously can't say too much about the exam itself because you are restricted because of the candidate agreement that you signed when you took the exam. But what do you think was the biggest struggle that you had with getting the right answers for that?
Can I name like a specific subject without stating the hardware?
Let's take a sort of something directly from the CompTIA exam objectives as an example.
Expansion is what I had a problem with.
So thinking specifically about the buses inside of a computer, for example?
Yeah.
And that, of course, is one on the CompTIA exam objectives for the 801, especially, is there's a lot of different bus types that are listed. Your example was a very good one you gave because you have to memorize all of these different bus types, what types of things are plugging into the bus types. You have to have some general idea about the speeds that are used over those very standardized bus types. And it's almost overwhelming the amount of information you have to memorize for the 801. A lot of people will say after they took the 801, that was so much memorization that I had to know just to get through that part of the exam. Did you find a similar scenario for yours?
Oh yeah, definitely. Lots of expansion, lots of RAM.
If you look at the very first section of the 801, and this is something I go through whenever I'm doing the video series, the very first section of the 801 and the very first section of the 901, it seems like they're never going to end. There is so much information in those sections that it almost dwarfs the rest of the exam, even though I know they're not going to ask any more. There's not a lot more information they ask on the 801. If I was to look at the 901 exam, for instance, there are 4 domains in the 901. The first domain's 34% of the exam. So it's the highest percentage of content that you're going to be asked on the exam. And there's a lot there. So it does become a little bit more of a challenge to memorize all of this because there's so many interfaces, so many ports, so many speeds, the interfaces, the RAM, where the RAM goes, mobile devices are on the exam, networking is on there to pile on the things that have to be memorized. And so I get that. And I think one of the best things you can do is find the way to memorize these that works for you. I tell people to use the exam objectives as a checklist. Maybe that doesn't work for you. Maybe flashcards work for you better, where you're trying to understand the different sides of here's an exam, here's an expansion bus, here's a memory type. Tell me everything there is to know about that. And on the back of the expansion card is here's expansion bus. It's PCI Express. It runs at these 64 bits. You've got these kinds of speeds so that you could start getting a feel for what those happen to be. I think another part of the challenge is that if you're just starting out, you've never worked with any of this stuff before, whereas I've been in positions where I've been building my own computers. I've had to replace equipment that's in computers. I had to get the right cards to go into the right motherboard with the right expansion bus. And you've touched and you've felt and you've plugged in and you've worked with these things before. If you haven't, they're this nebulous, weird concept that sort of floats above your head, and you don't have anything physical to put it back to. So if you have a way to get your hands on a motherboard, and you can look at that, even if it's a motherboard that doesn't work, and you can look at the motherboard and point at all of the different components and know what those are. You can take an expansion card and plug it into it and see how that expansion card fits. I think that muscle memory, that actual experience of doing it goes a long way to memorizing all of these little pieces. So if you have a way to get your hands on all of those different ports, if you have a way to get your hands on all of those different components, I think it will really help when you go back to take the exam again to try to really get those subjects solidified in your brain.
Well, all right. Yeah, it was. I'm not particularly a numbers guy. I'm more hands-on. Like, I can do everything with my hands except the memorization that messes with me. But
Yep.
Those are pretty good tips. Thanks. I think that's all I need.
Well, good luck with that. To have a look at getting some flashcards. There are a number of flashcards out on the internet that people are using already. Some are good, some are not so good. You may even want to make your own. Find the things that you're really struggling with and use those to be able to solidify those pieces. And since you are someone who's hands-on, there's a lot of old computers you can get off of eBay. There's probably people, you already work in a program where there's probably some of this equipment. Line up some of these cables and start looking at them and see where they would plug in, and maybe that can help solidify that in your brain as well.
Right. All right.
Thanks.
Thanks to you from Miss Off's class, the Salty Spittoon. We'll keep watching.
That's great. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck.
Thank you. Bye.
There's so much on the exam, though. I get it. There's a ton on the exam. It's just constant. Huge amounts of things to pour through. Whenever I start working through the exam questions themselves, as I mentioned, whenever I was building out my video series, it's like that first section never ends. The first thing I do is I sit down and I start building out all of the presentations. So before I shoot any video, the entire course is done. So I will sit down and create every single slide, every single bit of text I want to create. In fact, I've already made the course notes before I've made the course because it's all there. So I just spell it all out. I get every port. I get every interface. I find a picture for all of these. I find pictures online that I can buy. I find devices that I have. I take pictures of. A lot of the stuff that's in my course are pictures I've made and pictures I've got other places. So I have really tried to find and touch every single one of these and get close-up pictures. I try to show you here's what it really looks like so that you can see it anywhere and be able to really click on it and know what it looks like. I think it's important to be able to do that as well, especially since there's so much on the exam that you would have to go through. I would like to be able to work through that as well and be able to step through every single one of those. Ultimately, you're effectively building your own course to be able to do that. And I think that's an important part of this. There are, and each one of these, in fact, if you use the A+ exam objectives, I'm going to flip through the ones that I have on my screen really quickly. Oh, I clicked the wrong button on my side. Let's click the right button on my side to make this a little bit bigger. So the exam objectives, because here's an example. Install and configure PC expansion cards. This is a big section of the exam. An entire section, 1.4, is just on expansion. So you have to know what sound cards, video cards, network cards, USB cards, FireWire cards, Thunderbolt cards, storage cards, modem cards, wireless cellular cards, and all of these are working on an expansion bus. So here's the expansion buses you need to know: PCI, PCI-X, PCIe, mini PCI. So you have to know all four of those. On the 901, it's a little different than the 801. Those are the four things you need to know on the 901. So that's where I get into really struggling with knowing all of these tiny pieces and being able to work through them. There's just so much to know and so much to work with. I get it. It's a minutia. There's just tons of these tiny little specific things. My thought for most people is get the broad brush of as much of this as you can. Don't worry about the detailed specifics. Somebody was telling me the other day they were going through all of they had taken the sockets for the exam, what section is that? Here they are, socket types 1.6. They've gone to all these socket types. Notice no CPUs are listed on the exam objectives. You can't see. But no CPUs are actually listed on the exam objectives. There is almost nothing here. Actually, there is nothing here about a specific CPU. But what they did is they took that socket types of those sockets, the Intel and the AMDs, and they found out what types of CPUs, because multiple CPUs could fit into a number of these socket types. And then for each of the CPUs, they started breaking out all of the detailed specifications of possible CPUs that might fit into one of these socket types. Okay, you're going way too deep at that point. You don't need to know that information. No CPUs are listed anywhere in these CompTIA exam objectives, so you should not have to go and learn any specific CPU information. There are some characteristics of CPUs that you have to know, and those are certainly in there. For instance, you have to know what speeds are, the characteristics of a CPU. What is the speed when we talk about a CPU? What are cores? What are cache sizes? What is hyperthreading? But they're not asking you what specific CPU characteristics are using these. They're asking you what these topics mean. So stick to the exam objectives literally and follow them and check through them with an exact list, and you're going to be fine. And this is one where you do run into challenges. Don't just memorize things either. If you have a chance to work with them, it's going to help you really solidify what those things are going to be on the exam. Let's go to the 334 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hello?
Hi, what's your name?
Hello?
Hi, what's your name? Can't hear me. 334.
Hello?
I'm going to stick you back in the queue of 334. We can hear him saying hello, can't we? This may also be my problem. We'll try with 773 and see if 773 can hear me. How about you, caller? Are you there?
Yes, Mr. Professor. How are you, sir?
Hi, what's your name?
Joe Darvish.
Hey, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Professor, I really enjoy your courses, and thank you very kindly for all the beautiful knowledge that you provide.
Thank you, sir.
Can you briefly, thank you, sir, my pleasure. Can you briefly describe OSI model? It looks like it's always confusing different layers. If you have, of course, I hope I don't want to put you out of the subject, but if it's possible at your, leisure time, that would be great to know about it, because the way you describe it is understandable.
And it's one of these topics that we run into a lot. Specifically, the questions is about the OSI model, and the OSI model itself. There seems to be a controversy about the OSI model and how people are using it. A lot of people think it is not really useful to know, that the OSI model itself isn't something that is worth learning. But I can tell you from the last really 7 years of where I was working was in security, and we used the OSI model every day. It was a constant resource, a constant reference that we used, because if you're setting up a network or you're setting up a firewall or an intrusion prevention system or a router or a switch, we even use this term for switching. We call layer 3 switches are switches that we also have router functionality inside of. And the layer 3 is referring to the routing piece. I will say, because we are in the A+ study group, that there is no need to know the OSI model for the A+ exam. Now, it will help you understand some of the networking pieces, but it's completely unnecessary to memorize the OSI model for the A+ certification. You will need to know it for the Network Plus, and you will need to know it for the Security Plus. So make sure that if you're working on the A+, I mentioned, for instance, don't spend your time on things that aren't in the exam objectives. Well, the OSI model is not in the exam objectives, so don't spend your time on those pieces of it. I do have a video on the Network Plus side that breaks down every single one of these layers and steps through it. One of the things I mentioned to somebody the other day, and I said, if you really want to solidify the OSI model in your brain, one of the best things that you can do is to download Wireshark. Have you ever used Wireshark before?
Briefly, sir. Generally, I have the idea. But
Oh, good.
I haven't used it.
Yeah, Wireshark is one of those things that's easy to use, but incredibly difficult to master because you're always learning something new in a protocol decode. And that's really what Wireshark does. It grabs all of the frames off of your network, whether you're on a wired network or a wireless network, and it presents the information to you in plain English. It breaks out details of what all of these protocols mean at the bit and byte level. And you can also look at things at the bit and byte level if you want to. But I often tell people to at least take a packet capture, because when you start looking at the packet capture itself, it really puts it and layers it in the OSI model. It gives you a breakdown of, it does it in reverse of what we're used to seeing. It puts the physical part on top and tells you what frame and how many bytes went across the wire. It puts layer 2 and shows you MAC addresses that are running at layer 2. It shows you layer 3 with the internet protocol and shows you IP addresses running at layer 3. It shows you layer 4 with the, in this case, TCP is running at layer 4, and there's port numbers that are in use. In fact, I'm going to scroll over here. My destination port was 443. And if we've studied our port numbers, we know that Wireshark even added in there, that's HTTPS. So layer 4 is well represented in this view of things. And then you've got other views of this as well that you could work through. Wireshark is such a good way to go about using this. I really can't speak well enough at what Wireshark can do for you and the things that it can provide. I think that's one of the things that you should focus on with knowing the OSI model. If you've already read through the OSI model, you've read a lot of books that talk about the OSI model, you've gone through other pieces of the OSI model and trying to understand those, that's one I think that can really help you ultimately is to grab Wireshark and do a packet capture and see if you can apply back to the real world what you've already learned in the OSI model. I think that should help you quite a bit.
Thank you very much, Professor. It was great. I appreciate your information. I definitely would follow that advice.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you.
Thanks for calling. I appreciate the call.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Well, I managed to zoom up on something on my screen, and now I can't unzoom because I did a thing. It's a known thing, and I shouldn't have done that. But now I'm doing a thing. So you can almost hear me behind the scenes clicking stuff. Like, what am I clicking? What in the world's going on? What's wrong with him? See if I can get this mouse over here. Oh, I think I did. I'm back. Who said he couldn't do it? Stick you back in the queue there. We did have that 773 that called. Let's see if we can talk to that caller. Are you there, 773?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
I'm
I
here.
stuck you back in the queue. So sorry about that. Thanks for calling. Take care.
Yes, you too. Thank you very kindly for.
Well, I'm sorry. You're welcome. Oh, I'm getting a little punchy. Getting a little punchy with these things and trying to get through here. Let me fix the thing that I broke on my screen. See how the chat room's doing. We haven't checked in with the chat room lately. Yeah, I really didn't talk about layer 8, did I? The political layer, which some people say. Some people say it's a user layer. Yeah, they need, Laura needs to update her Wireshark book. I'm sure she's working on that. Many of you know Laura Chappell. She really has the ultimate Wireshark books. Really, she has more than one now. If you're ever interested in learning more about Wireshark or learning everything about Wireshark, go grab Laura Chappell's books and have a look at that. She is an incredibly fantastic speaker. She knows her Wireshark very well. She's just great to learn from. I like looking at her books, reading her stuff, watching her videos. It's all good. I have some more phone now that I can use my computer again. Let's go back to the phone lines. Going to get rid of 773. You can maybe listen on the stream. We have the 334 area code. Let me pot you up there. Are you there, caller?
Hello?
Hi, 334. What's your name?
I can't hear you.
I get that. I'm sorry it worked out that way. It's too bad because your connection is amazing. It's too bad you're not able to hear what's coming through on that connection. Well, you can always try this, by the way. If you're calling in through Skype, you can always try the Skype call testing service, and that will tell you if you're able to hear things properly and if they're able to hear you properly. Something I do before the show just to make sure this is going to work okay. We were What else are we talking about with those pieces? Oh, the OSI model and Wireshark. For those of you that I used the OSI model when I was working in security multiple times a day because I was working with next generation firewalls that had a mode where they would sit inline invisibly, effectively at layer 1. They were a repeater, sending information back and forth, and yet it was a firewall, but nobody knew it was there. Sometimes you'll hear that called a bump in the wire. Well, they just plug in, they'll break a wire and stick a firewall in the middle, except there's no MAC address, there's no IP address, data just flows. It's like magic. So there's layer 1. That's how you describe it, because that's really what's happening. You can also set up some firewalls to be a switch. So there's a layer 2, and we talk about layer 2 and how the firewall decides where traffic goes based on MAC address. That's a switch. That's layer 2. Then you can set up your firewall traditionally as layer 3, where you're assigning IP addresses to every interface on the firewall, and you're plugging in other connections, and you're setting up routing tables within the firewall. That's layer 3. Firewalls traditionally allow or disallow traffic based on port number. Now you're talking about layer 4 information. So when you're describing this to people, you're discussing layer 4 details. And then, of course, next generation firewalls are able to discern what's happening with the application at layer 7. Some of these firewalls can do SSL decryption. So there's a layer 5 and 6 component that gets into this. So when you're describing these products and you're talking to people who've never seen them before, you can now talk the same language. You could say, no, this function operates at layer 3. And people who are network people and security people automatically think, oh, that's an IP address. There's a routing table. I know exactly where we are with layer 3. Now, what if I wanted to allow Twitter but block somebody from posting to Twitter? Oh, that's a layer 7 function. Here's where that goes. And people can think that, okay, you're not doing that by port number. You're not doing that by IP address. You're doing that by something at the application with layer 7. It becomes a very powerful way to communicate with people who are working on networks and working with security and working with technology in general. Very useful. Yes, one of my very first industry jobs I worked with in corporate America. I worked with in places where I was repairing computers. I worked in a corporate insurance help desk. But one of the first jobs I got working for a manufacturer was with Network General, the company that made the sniffer. I worked there about 10 years. And that's one where I was able to get into the protocol. So I jumped from Windows and went into the network to decide to figure out what's really going on the network. And it was great because you plugged into everybody's networks. You could see amazing things. That was an exciting product and an exciting time. The Network General eventually was bought by McAfee back in the hubbub of the internet. That became Network Associates. That lasted 5 years or so. Network Associates divested themselves from Network General. Effectively, it was bought off of McAfee, became Network General again. Go figure. In fact, Network Associates went back to McAfee. McAfee obviously bought by Intel later. Network General was then bought by NetScout. And I think today NetScout is the company, NetScout Systems, I think I said that right, is the company that has and maintains the sniffer product line. So there you go. There's a short history of corporate protocol of product protocol analysis. And of course, these days, most people are using Wireshark because it's open source. It's absolutely free. It's easy to work with. Well, this brings my voice to the end of another study group, I think. We had a lot to go through today. We got through a ton of information today. I want to thank everybody for joining us. We were able to get through a ton of questions today. A lot of people said we need to get through more questions, so I tried to squeeze a few more in there at the bottom. I want to thank everybody for joining me for that. Thanks for calling in. Thanks for being in the chat room. Just thanks for your cards, your emails, your letters, all of the things you send throughout the month. I wouldn't be able to put together this site. I wouldn't be able to have the videos. We wouldn't be able to do the study groups without you. I can't thank you enough for your ongoing support. And I really, we're just having the most fun over here doing what we're doing. And I can't wait to see what happens as we continue to do this. I have so many new things that are happening in the next month or so. Make sure for you A+ people that you are watching my Twitter feed, you're watching, and of course, I'll talk more about it during the next study group. There should be some new things to show you about that time. And thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everyone.